All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another PNP Live. My name is Bashan Horsley. I'm part of the event staff with Politics and Prose. Before we get started fully with this event, just want to go over a couple of quick items. The first is that if you would like to ask a question of our author, we would ask for you to place it in the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, not the chat section, so that it could just help us keep everything organized and help facilitate Q&A. Also, at any time during the event, you'll be able to go to the chat section where you'll find a link which will take you directly to the Politics of Prose website where you can purchase a copy of The Republic of False Truths. We, of course, highly encourage you to do so, and we thank you for your patronage as that continues to allow us to be able to bring you these events. The Republic of False Truths has been heralded as a devastating work of fiction about the Egyptian revolution, taking us inside the battle raging between those in power and those prepared to lay down their lives in the defense of freedom. It is given to us by one of the foremost writers in the Arab world. Alaa Al Aswany is the author of numerous works of fiction and nonfiction, including the novels The Yacoubian Building, the best-selling novel in the Arab world for more than 5 years, with more than 1 million copies sold around the world, Chicago, named by Newsday as the best translated novel of 2006, and most recently, the Automobile Club of Egypt. His work has been translated into more than 30 languages and published in more than 100 countries. He has received several international awards, including the Grinzane Cavour Prize, and in 2016, he was appointed a Chevalier of the Ordre des Arts et des Lettres of France. Originally trained as a dentist, he has practiced in both Chicago and Cairo. Mr. Al Aswany will be joined in conversation today by Professor Jonathan Smolin. He is the Associate Professor of Middle Eastern Studies at Dartmouth College. Without any further ado, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I just want to start by saying what an honor it is to have the chance to talk with you about this latest novel. I feel like every novel that is published, every novel that you published is an event. I remember when Yacoubian Building was published, when Chicago, the Automobile Club, this latest one, as soon as it was published in Arabic, I had it FedExed to me from Beirut so I could read it immediately. And now everybody gets to read it in English, which is just in this brilliant translation. So I'm just thrilled that it's out, it's available, everyone can read it, and just really congratulations on this brilliant work. So
thank you very much.
So I wanted to talk with you about the novel, about literature, about the personal. And I think a good place to start is about your own involvement in politics, about your own engagement in Egypt before 2011. How did it feel to finally write a novel about a recent revolution, something that I know that you had been dreaming about, thinking about, writing about for years leading up to it? In other words, how did the personal intersect with the literary for you in this novel?
Thank you for this question, and I'm very happy to see you, my dear friend. And I must thank Politics and Prose and everybody who made this event possible. I don't know. Some people say they have a problem with the sound. I don't know if this could be fixed. Anyway, we can say that the formula to me is fiction equal reality plus imagination. I left everything I wrote about. I got inspired by real people to create my characters. I described things I saw, but it is not just an imitation of reality. There is the imagination. And of course, what is important, as you know, in a novel, is not the now element. In any fiction we have, the now element You could say the political element, the social one, the issues of what is happening now. This is not the most important element in fiction. The most important element in fiction is the human element. To be capable as a novelist to produce life, to produce real characters, to describe how people suffer. Accordingly, your novel or your work will always live. We read today novels written by Balzac, by Dostoevsky, by Hemingway, by many great writers. The now element doesn't exist anymore. But what exists and what will always exist is the human element. You can read a novel by Dostoevsky in the 19th century, and you will find a character who is very similar to your neighbor or your friend or your colleague. So I try to produce a human life on the papers, and that's the most important thing for me.
So the 1919 revolution, which we've talked about quite a bit before, the 1919 revolution, as well as the 1952 coup, have featured prominently in modern Egyptian literature, of course. We think of some of the great works that have focused on this. And your novel is clearly the novel of the 2011 revolution. But what were the special challenges involved in writing this revolution for you, which you participated in directly? You lived in the hopes and dreams, and then you lived in the disappointment in its aftermath. But if we think about some of our other writers and the ways that they have documented previous revolutions, what are some of the challenges, or what were some of the challenges that you faced in writing this revolution?
You see, you write what I write, what I feel, and I did feel this revolution. As you said, I lived this revolution minute by minute, and I was with the people, and that was a very strong experience in my life. And of course, I was inspired to write this novel, but I needed time. You cannot, as you know, there is a difference between journalism and fiction. Journalism, you can write now about what is happening now. Fiction, you need a space, you need a distance, you need just to step back so that you will have the clear vision of art. You see, no distortion, no extra emotion, just what is essential. And it took me 4 years to get to this mood. Interestingly, probably, I have 41 publishers all over the world. And I signed for another novel with those publishers. And then at some point, I felt that I feel like writing this novel about the revolution. And they were very much nice and understanding, and they did change the contracts. But I believe that the novel is a love story. You try all the time to understand why you fell in love with this person and not the other persons, and you don't understand, because the most important thing in love is not definable. And the same for the novel. I teach creative writing, and I try all the time to transmit my experience to my students. But still, and I say that to my students, the most important thing in art is not definable.
So is in some ways, could we look at this novel as your own love story with the revolution?
Absolutely. And of course, no, as you know, not all love stories end in a nice way. You see, but yeah, I can relate the novel writing with a love story. You know, it has the same intuition, coincidence, feeling, motivation, pleasure. You know, and probably in the end it will be a happy ending or an unhappy ending, but at least you will never regret because you lived a beautiful love story.
You changed to the experience. You became
Yes,
a different human being through the experience.
absolutely, absolutely. We become definitely reading and writing literature. We become much better human beings because we learn how to feel the suffering of other people. We learn not to judge other people, but to try to understand them in a better way.
Yes.
Accordingly, yes, the literature is a wonderful tool to teach us humanity.
Absolutely. So you brought up something very interesting. If you go back in time, what would this novel have looked like if you started earlier, if you had started in 2014 or 2015 or 2016? In other words, the process of digesting events and getting distance. Could you speak if what would have happened if you had finished this earlier? Just out of curiosity.
No, I mean, I have experience now. When I didn't have experience in the beginning, I'm talking about 30 years ago
Okay.
or 35 years ago, I
Yes.
used to do those mistakes. It's to try prematurely to approach or to write a novel. The novel needs time
Yes.
because now what would happen? I would have never been able to produce the novel the way I want. Why? Because there is something we don't. Isabella Allende said something I quote: "We don't invent the novel, we discover the novel." And the meaning here is very important. We have the novel. I have the novels in my heart, in my mind, and my job is to discover what I already have. You see, so it needs experience, time. You know, you should be in a good mood and patience. You should be patient.
It's like a psychological complex that you have to unearth, right? So you have to dig deep in to find, to analyze, to understand. It's there,
Absolutely.
but you need the time.
Absolutely. In the beginning, I suffered. I didn't understand the procedure, so I got frustrated, upset, you know, and I thought that it's terrible what's happening. I cannot write. And then I learned to wait. You should wait and you should be patient because something is going on. Even if you don't see it, with experience, you will feel it. That at some point, yes, now you're right. You see?
I love it. Fantastic. Thank you. So you are in a unique position in that you're extraordinarily popular and successful, both in the Arab world and abroad in different languages. And this makes me think about the way that you straddle multiple audiences, multiple readers. So when you write, when you are in the process of writing, when you're finishing your novel, what kind of reader do you have in mind, or do you not have a reader in mind when you're writing?
No, I respect my readers, but they have no authority over me. You know, they don't tell me what to write. I'm not doing. I never did that. I will never do that. I write what I want to write. for my readers, but I expect my readers to understand that I write what I want to write, not I write what they want to read. And the difference is huge, you see. And it's a very dangerous, way, some mistake, very dangerous mistake, some novelists did, is to try, because you know the formula. You are the one who had the success, right? So you know what exactly did work with your readers. So if you try to do that, you will betray the art. And if you betray the art, you will lose the art. You see, I don't do that. I write what I want. And I'm very proud of my readers, because as you said, I have readers in 100 countries all over the world. And I think this is the real success. And this is a human element I was talking about. Because if I describe the suffering of a girl in the south of Egypt, in a rural area in the south of Egypt, she never went to Cairo, she never went to Alexandria. And I go to Norway, and I found Norwegian reader who will, and this happened to me, who will tell me, you see, she told me, the Norwegian reader, I absolutely understood the suffering of these girls. And I think this, to me, this is what literature is all about. It's to be capable just to overcome all the barriers to deliver a real human message.
It's not the question of the novel being transnational, it's the question of it being human.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I never went to Russia so far. I got many invitations, but I wasn't able for many reasons to. I had many other things. But I can feel exactly the suffering of the main characters of Chekhov, of Dostoevsky, of Tolstoy, Turgenev. You see, this is literature. It's a way to teach us about other people.
Fantastic, thank you. So authoritarianism has unfortunately gone global, increasingly emerging in Europe and the United States. So did your experience in the United States the past few years influence in any way your writing?
Yeah, of course. You're asking me if the fact that I live in the US now influenced my writing.
Some way, yes.
Some way. Yeah, of course. I came here more than 30 years ago, and as you know, and I studied dentistry. I had a master's degree in Chicago, University of Illinois. And I can claim that I have an American experience. I wrote a novel about my experience, inspired by my experience in Chicago. And of course, in the terrible situation in Egypt, I was under severe pressure, because not only I was banned from writing, not only there was a kind of character assassination campaign against me in the state media. Not only they banned everything, but they began to make troubles to my family. When I came here, I finished this novel while I was teaching about college. And as soon as I arrived to the US, I felt a very strange feeling. Something very strange happened, that I was able to write easily. It's like I was struggling in Egypt, which was not the case before. But as soon as I arrived here, everything went you know, in a very good way. And I believe because I felt safe. You know something, my American and Western friends don't, and I'm not blaming them, don't feel very often, is that you, despite the fact of you're not happy with the president, you're not happy with what happened with Mr. Trump, was, you know, of course I agree, but you live in a state of law. And this feeling, many people forget because that's the way they were born. That's the way they were raised. So nothing. We, the people who lived under dictatorship, we appreciate that. We really appreciate. And I feel the difference because in the Arab countries, not only in Egypt, anything could happen to you at any time. The law is flexible. The law is applicable according to who you are, which is not the case here or in the democratic countries.
So thinking about being outside of the country, is it difficult to write about Egypt from outside of the country? I understand that you said that you feel a safety, that there is a distance, that there is a security. But I'm wondering, is it, with that kind of distance, is it a double-edged sword? Is it hard to write about Egypt with such distance? Are you afraid of losing your connection with events on the ground, having this kind of distance?
No, yes or no, and no. Of course, emotionally, of course, you miss your country. I think this is quite normal. But I miss my country. I miss my home. I miss my friends. But I don't miss the dictatorship. I don't miss the pressure. I don't miss the injustice. Accordingly, my feeling is mixed. But the fact that you live abroad and will you be able to write about your country? I think if we look, as you know, as a professor of literature, if we just think about the writers who wrote abroad, most of the Greek novelists wrote novels while they were not home. Let me think about Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Dostoevsky even lived 4 years out of Russia. You have Vargas Llosa, even Hemingway wrote while he was not in the US. So I'm not worried about that. And I would say even when I am distant, I probably, or most probably, I will be able to remember in a clearer way.
Yes. So, like Mahfouz, you are a master of what I would call the panoramic novel, in which we have many characters that are giving us a panorama of the world of the novel. And I'm wondering what led you in this direction. If you could speak a little bit about your influences or just the kinds of writers that you feel you connect with, and what, in a sense, led you to this form of the novel.
Well, there are two questions. The second question, I don't think any writer could. What led you to this form? Mm-hmm. You know, you are motivated by your sense of beauty. Why did you like this shirt? And it's, by the way, it's a very elegant shirt. And why did you like this shirt and this color and not other colors? Because this is your sense of beauty. That's how you feel that you will be more elegant, which is the case. Writing is like this, you know. Why do I choose this form? The novel decides for itself, and I follow my feeling of beauty. But of course, I was influenced by many writers. I read in four languages. I read in Spanish with dictionary, and English, French, and Arabic. I was raised in a French school, so we had the French literature very early, and it had a very strong early influence on me. And then after that, the Russian literature, the English, the English literature, and the American literature. I believe Ernest Hemingway is a turning point in the history of literature. Accordingly, I had many influences, but I must say that I follow what is happening in the world literature, and I feel grateful to Gabriel Garcia Marquez because, in my opinion, he saved the novel. The novel was kidnapped by the new school, the new French school, Le Nouveau Roman, in my opinion, and they produced novels without characters and without stories, without plots. And of course, we lost the readers because the readers many times don't want to say that this text is boring if the writer is very famous, because they are concerned that people would accuse them of being ignorant or far behind. So they say, oh, well, he's a great writer, you know, but they don't read the novel, or they read the first chapter, right? But Garcia Marquez just saved, liberated the novel by writing characters and good stories, very human, of course, many characters. So I was following, and I was following what was happening in the world literature, and I believe that Garcia Marquez played a major role. Now, the novelists, the writers began or continued now to write something people can understand.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask if you were working on something new, thinking about the next event, the next novel that I'm going to have FedExed from Beirut.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, I'm working on a novel which happened in Alexandria between 1962 and 1967. And those 5 years were a turning point in the history of Alexandria in Egypt, because, as you know, Alexandria used to be a cosmopolitan society. Everybody was welcomed in Alexandria in Egypt. Italians, Greek people, there was a very strong Jewish community, absolutely welcomed by everybody. And between 62 and 65, the military dictatorship promoted, and that's exactly what's happening now, again, promoted a kind of xenophobia. We are the Egyptians, all the foreigners are against us. There is a conspiracy theory, and they are here. There could be any foreigner is a potential spy. Accordingly, and I was inspired by this drama. Do you believe that there were Egyptians of European origin who were born in Alexandria? They lived all their lives in Alexandria, and they were in Alexandria for generations. And during this time, because of Nasser regime, 1962 to 67, all of a sudden they realized that now they are no more Egyptians, and they were treated as they were if they were against Egypt. And they had to leave. Sometimes, or many times, they were obliged to leave, kicked out of the country. And sometimes the regime made it for them impossible to stay. And I felt that I have to write about this. And I'm writing the novel, and some characters are Egyptians, but I have Italians, I have Greek characters, and they are very, I have a relation with my characters, and the characters of this novel, they are just wonderful people, I tell you.
The human, right?
Yes,
Humanity.
yes.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. I thought we'd give some extra time to Q&A. So everybody who's following along, please put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll take it from there. So the first question we have from Mustafa Marwan is just how to apply for mentorship opportunities that you mentioned on your website for budding writers. So I know that you also run a writing workshop. If you could just
yes, if the question is about the workshop, I think it's easy to apply on the site, or you can write to me directly on my email, Dr. Aswany57@yahoo.com.
Great. The next question is from Noha Abdur Rasul. Hello, Dr. Alaa. Sending you my greetings. It's not easy for me to see so clearly a state without law versus a state of law in the United States. Also, I don't live in Egypt now, I live in Germany, but I can't say that the fear has left me either. Sometimes it feels like added fear because in every new country, you face the challenges there as a foreigner. So maybe what she's asking here is there some connection with her experience of feeling like there is added fear of being a foreigner and the challenges in a new country?
It depends on you, because of course you will find people who don't like foreigners, and of course you will, especially now, you will find people who are racist. Unfortunately, there is a very strong movement of far right, people or white supremacists and all this. It depends on you. Why? Because do not deny you're a foreigner. Why do you deny this? I mean, when somebody, and this is a very common question in everywhere, in the West, when somebody will ask you, where are you from, right? The question could be asked by good intention and bad intention, and mostly it is asked by bad intention. It's like, especially after the Trump, why don't you go home, and so when you say, where are you from, it means you don't belong here, right? Fine, I don't belong here. What's the problem? I'm Egyptian. I'm Egyptian who lives in the US. So what's the problem? If you approach this from this angle, is that I'm not going to try to make the point that I am American or I'm German or I am French. I'm not, but basically I'm a human being, and basically in the first place, you must respect me. Yeah? I think it depends on you. But in the end, you will find the law, which unfortunately doesn't exist in our country. You will have a racist officer who will be very harsh and nasty, very good, but you will find his supervisor, and there is a court, and you could have lawyers, and which all this doesn't exist in a dictatorship.
Next is by Magid Hanna. It is not a question. I just wanted to tell Dr. Alaa how influential you are to a liberal Egyptian like me who just moved to France. I still watch your old and recent lectures. You definitely participated in shaping my conscience. Thank you. And so
thank you very much. This is very precious, my dear friend. I don't know if you know how precious is this. I had more than 18 awards all over the world in literature, and some of them are the most among the most prestigious awards. But I believe the highest, the most prestigious award, I had it in the Tahrir Square, because I met more than one time. It happened many times. People, young people who said the same thing our dear Magid said, is that we are here in the revolution. We are here because of what you wrote. And I believe this is the highest honor, the highest award for any writer.
Next is Magid, who says, thank you for continuing the weekly videos on YouTube in Arabic. They're wonderful, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Your insights is really appreciated. You mentioned in a few occasions that we should be selective in choosing reliable sources to learn the history of Egypt. Can you recommend some reliable sources for the history of Egypt?
Well, the most important thing is that you keep yourself away from the official narrative, because mainly, basically, all what we learned in school was just lies. You know, I learned, for example, that the revolution 1919 failed, and then I read after that, and I realized it never failed. And then I learned that 1952 was a revolution. And then I read, and it was a coup d'etat by definition, by the book. People went, and Egyptian people slept on the day of July 22nd. There was a king. And then they woke up, there was no more a king. There was an army. And that's what we call coup d'etat. After that, of course, it was supported by the people. So if you, of course, I cannot mention all the books now, but you just, if you read in Arabic, you'll find very important books by, for example, by Abdurrahman al-Rafi'i, by Tari al-Bashri, who is somebody politically I'm against, absolutely against, because he became Muslim Brothers, and he if you follow what happened in Egypt, he played, you know, a very bad role after the revolution. But as a historian, he's very important. He's a very good book. The national movement, Al-Haraka Al-Wataniyya, between 1919 and 1954. It's really, you know, a very important source. And then you can just follow.
Fantastic. Heba Shazli says, lovely to meet you. I have taught Yacoubian Building at politics and prose classes, where we read novels to better understand a country, in this case, in other words, Egypt. Alf shukr, she says. So.
يا ستي العفو العفو والله. كتر خيرك.
And then she also says, read Naguib Mahfouz and Alaa Al Aswany for a wonderful glimpse into Egypt's history and understanding of Egyptians.
Thank you.
And then we have Abdullah Nasif asks, first, we have several questions if you're working on other books. And so you mentioned the book about Alexandria. I don't know if there's any other projects that you wanted to mention or discuss.
No, you cannot write, you cannot work on more than one novel. The novel is a life, you know. I struggle, for example, one day a week to prepare this video my friends were talking about. And before, I used to write in Deutsche Welle an article every week. I struggled to write the article in one day, because the novel is really something like a full-time job. You cannot do something else with the novel.
So may I add, you remind me of the great Egyptian writer Ahsan Abdul Quddus, who used to say that he lived in his novels when he was writing them so much that he couldn't sleep. He was living with the characters, and when he finished his novels, he would cry. And
Yeah.
you know, it was
Yeah.
so.
Well, I must say something that my friend, Professor Jonathan Smolin, is writing a book about Hassan Abdul Quddus. And when he told me that, I was really happy because Hassan Abdul Quddus was under-evaluated for many reasons. Dr. Smolin know exactly what were the reasons. And he's a great writer. So the book, the first time I asked Jonathan today if the book has been published, but he told me it will be published.
I'm still editing. I'm still editing.
Are you still editing? Yeah.
Inshallah soon.
Inshallah.
Thank you. So next we have, I'm sorry, 1 second. I started my this is by Anonymous. I started my memoir, which includes 18 years in the Arab world in Cairo in 2005. I have to go back after the pandemic. I write about battling in courts there, dirty judges, lawyers, DAs, etc. I lock up my writing when I am not home. I am afraid, sorry, 1 second here. And it just, they're asking for your email for advice and that they love your writing and that you are the great side of Egypt. Thank you from Susan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So you have a website, right, for writing workshops. Could you?
Yeah. And she can write to me. She can write to me just directly. And I don't know if they have my in the bookstore. They have all my contacts. Okay. They could please give them my contacts if this is possible.
Great. Next, we have Dan Matz. He says, do you have any relationships to Israeli writers or artists? Can you tell us about them?
Well, this is a very, I do believe, of course, I am against the Israeli policies with Palestinians, and I don't think I am the only one who is against the Israeli policies, and I think that many people, including Israeli artists, and writers are against what their government is doing to the Palestinians. I define terrorism by violence against any civilians, no matter what, no matter if those civilians are Israeli or Arabs or Egyptians. There is the war against the military and there is terrorism against civilians. And there is a very strong, I don't know why this happened, is that I refused to, there is a strong rumor that I refuse to translate my works to Hebrew. And this is not true for the reason that I cannot think of any writer who doesn't want to translate his works to any language. Hebrew was a spoken language in Egypt for centuries. And there was, Professor Smolin knows that, there was magazines and newspapers published in Cairo and Alexandria in Hebrew. So, of course, I accepted my works to be translated to Hebrew, and I think they took 3 novels or 2 novels, and the reviews, they were very well received in Israel. But this has nothing to do with my position against the Israeli aggression against the Palestinians. And I believe that it's time for both sides to understand that no one side will be able to erase the other side. And it's about time for people to make peace and to live together instead of killing each other.
Well said. Anonymous attendee says, I first read the Yacoubian Building for a college class. How do you feel about your novels being used in an academic setting?
Well, it's an honor, of course, because for many reasons. It's an honor because it's a success for any novelist, number one. Number two, it's very important to have the academic circles and the artists, together, because in the history of art, they were not always together. Sometimes the academic people were not happy with the artists, and sometimes the artists were not happy with the academic work. But to have them together, and this is how it should be, and this is one positive aspect in the American universities that you don't find easily in Europe, is that you study fiction, you study creative writing, you will have a PhD professor who will teach you very important things about creative writing, and you will have a writer who will give you the craft in the same time, will give you his experience. This is something I like about the American universities, and in the cinema, the same. You study acting, you will have a professor who has a PhD, and you will have an actor, a great actor, transmitting his experience. And I believe that's very important. That's very important. And again, it doesn't exist in many places in Europe. So there's something I like about the American universities.
Another anonymous attendee asks, was there a moment during the protests where you stopped and said, I will tell this story? If so, when was it? The person who asked the question says, I was in Cairo and remember when the jets were overhead and the tanks were in the streets. And I remember thinking, oh, this is real. In other words.
Yeah, of course. That's a very good question. Generally speaking, any novelist is two persons. I am two persons, and any novelist is two persons. There is a person who's talking now, and there is another person in the back of my mind was taking photos with a very sensitive camera. So I am just, of course, this meeting is recorded, but it's recorded for YouTube, and it's recorded in my mind too, you see? So generally speaking, any moment I live, it could be a novel or a short story or whatever. And my machine, my friend who is here with the camera is working 24/7, But in the revolution, we call it the Friday of Fury. Gomat al-Ghadab. I had somebody who was killed beside me. He talked to me. He was talking to me. And that was like 2 p.m. And then he went, he stepped away like 2 or 3 steps. And then he fell on the ground. And I went and he had a bullet here. And they were snipers all over the buildings, and they were using very sophisticated arms, so you don't hear anything. And they were at one bullet here. And the people, that was really unbelievable. The people, they didn't run away and they didn't step back. They just carried this guy, the Shaheed, the martyr, and they went toward the Ministry of Interior, where the snipers were. So I got back home and I tried to understand this. Why the people are not scared? You could be the next one, the next victim, easily, very easily. But no one single person ran away. And I read, and then I remember an article in Psychology, and the article said that during the war and the revolutions, the I becomes we. So people don't feel individuals anymore. They are we. They are an element in the crowd. And they want to achieve the goal of the revolution or to the enemy, to fight the enemy. So they don't care about their personal safety the way we do during our daily life. At that moment, I said, no way, I will write a novel about it.
Fantastic, fantastic. There's Haitham Noor says, the most valuable asset I learned from Dr. Al Aswany was not to judge, but to try to understand.
Absolutely.
Talked about empathy and as part of humanity. Myself and my family are so proud of Dr. Al Aswany and his work, truly a heart of gold. So,
thank you very much.
Noha Abdul Rasul says, I wish it were easy to feel good about living in a democratic country, but what if I'm not happy with their policies towards where we come from? In other words, the Middle East. I think this is a conflict as big as living in a dictatorship. In other words, how do you...
but I have the right absolutely to criticize, and I did, to criticize the president of the US, right? And I'm quite sure that I did that on TV, I did that in interviews, I did that in videos in Europe, and I criticized Monsieur the President, Sarkozy, I criticized on TV, and a very, very successful program in France. But I was quite sure that I will never be arrested and I will never be in prison. And this will never affect my immigration status. If I have the green card, they will never take away the green card because I criticized Mr. Trump. Why? This is what we call a state of law. And as I said, the people who were born and raised here, sometimes they don't feel how precious is this. We feel. So you live in a country, you're not happy with the foreign policy. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy, not for one day, with the American foreign policy. I believe the American foreign policy in the Middle East has been destructive, has been very harmful to my country and to my people. But America is not only the American foreign policy. America, in the first place, is the people. And you will find that most of the people, they are not aware about their foreign policy for many reasons, especially for places like the Middle East. America is the people. America is the state of law, is the opportunity. You are given an opportunity. And if you prove yourself, the limit is the sky, which is not the case in the dictatorship countries. So it is not paradise where you live, Noha. It is not paradise. You will have problems. You will have problems with racist people. But the minimum allowed of opportunities and the law regulations will give you really a life which will be more productive and more comfortable than Egypt. I'm sorry to say that, but I always say the truth.
So the next novel specifically, sorry, the next question is specifically about the novel. One of the attendees says, I read the novel, I find it different from your other novels. I have the feeling that you wrote it partly to explain the revolution to the world. It is a good thing, of course, but I feel that you had a sense of duty of doing so. And I'm wondering if this is true. Did you feel a sense of duty or responsibility to explain the revolution to the world?
Well, I cannot say no, because I'm not the right person to analyze my novels or to say what this novel is all about. I'm probably the last one who has the right to do that. But I would say, of course, I take any opinion seriously, with respect. I think about it. But most of the people were capable to find the art in the novel. And the art in the novel, for me, is much more important than explaining the revolution. I make a video every week, and I used to write for the New York Times, and I wrote for Deutsche Welle. I could have written what happened in the revolution by articles. But the most important thing in the novel is the human factor, is the people. It's how you see that somebody could turn out to be a different person, very different because of the revolution and the reaction to the people, and how those young people were punished, because they were punished because they did dream. They dreamed, and they were punished for the dream. So this is a human part, and this is what is more important, not only in my fiction, in any fiction. But still, I respect your opinion, and of course, I will think about it.
Well, thank you so much. Does anyone have a last burning question before we wrap up here? Well, we'd like to thank you so much. What an honor it was to have this conversation.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you, my dear Jonathan. And as usual, you've been capable to make a wonderful discussion, wonderful conversation, very rich, very intelligent, and very interesting. And I'm not surprised because I know you, and you did that before with me at Dartmouth, you remember, and you know, yes.
Still talk about it, Doctor. They still talk.
Yeah. Thanks to you. Thank you very much. And thanks to our friend Bashan, and to the audience. Thank you very much. And thanks for everybody who made this event possible.
Thank you.